Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Smurfs followed by Tom and Jerry Kids on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Bugs and Daffy Show, followed by Animaniacs on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Back to Bedrock, followed by Scooby Movies on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the What a Cartoon Show, followed by Freakazoid on Cartoon Network.
Up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by the Jetsons on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Cow and Chicken, followed by the new Scooby Movie on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's Johnny Bravo, followed by Courage the Cowardly Dog on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Acme Hour, followed by the Super Friends on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Super Friends, followed by Godzilla on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Flintstones, followed by the Jetsons on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Batman, followed by Beetlejuice on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Freakazoid, followed by Two Stupid Dogs on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Two Stupid Dogs, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory, followed by Cow and Chicken on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, Alvin and the Chipmunks' Greatest Hits continues, followed by the Flintstones on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's the Animaniacs on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's more Justice League, followed by He-Man on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's more Zoids, followed by G.I. Joe on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's more G.I. Joe, followed by Batman Beyond on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's more Batman Beyond, followed by Boomer Action on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Sheep in the Big City, followed by Mike, Lou, and Og on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Boomerang, followed by The Chuck Jones Show on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's more Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Cartoon Theater, followed by a pup named Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Cartoon the Top 5, followed by Teen Titans on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! Followed by Ed, Edd and Eddy on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Dexter's Laboratory, followed by Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network. Coming up next, it's Totally Spies, followed by Dexter's Laboratory on Cartoon Network.